Greetings from Charlotte, North Carolina. You've stumbled into the Music Nerds Clubhouse. I'm Greenberg from the Debts No Honest Man Can Pay podcast, found exclusively, well, not exclusively, but primarily on Apple Podcast. And now, without any further ado, I give to you the heart-stopping, pants-dropping, house-rocking, earthquaking, booty-shaking, Tylenol-taking, legendary Music Nerds crew. Up first is the one person who's done more to edify my musical library than any other known being in the known universe. We used to run wild together on the mean streets of suburban Detroit, and now he is the handiest man in the whole damn Hudson Valley, Mr. Joe Guinness. Up next, he's the most active activist I've ever known. He's the bizarre love child of Richie Cunningham and Bono, and the host of the long-running Teacher on the radio program on WTTU in Cookeville, Tennessee, the minister of maximality, the Right Reverend Andy Sunfrog Smith. He's not just a fan of all pop that matters, he's downright academic about it. He's our voice of reason, holding truth over treason, a man for all seasons. From Nashville, Tennessee, Pop Matters columnist, Professor Rick Quinn. She's an engineering genius with a heart full of soul and our resident EDM correspondent. She reminds us all that sometimes the best way to cope with the raging dumpster fire we live in is to just keep dancing. Roll over, Beethoven, and make some noise for Nashville's Amy Rock. And joining us tonight for the very first time is a man who I've been told is as big of a Springsteen fan as I am. He's a professor of theater, so he may or may not bring the drama. He may or may not burst into song. And he may or may not smack you upside the head with his jazz hands. He's also the father of our very own Gus Creeder, straight out of Cookeville, Mark Creeder. And last but not least, I do not know if he's joining us, but I spent a lot of time writing this, so I'm not going to let it go to waste. Last but not least, he's the youngest and the wisest of all of us. He's a one-stop shop for all of your hip-hop knowledge needs. He gives us all hope for the future, and he's the only one on tonight's panel who can call Mark Creeder daddy without it getting weird. Nerding out with us or traipsing across the Emerald Isle, he's the managing editor of the Tennessee Tech Oracle. Give it up for Gus, the Creator Creeder. He's going to be sad that he wasn't here for that. Okay.
Scott, that was so freaking great. I'm going to listen to, if I'm ever feeling down, I'm just going to listen to the first couple of minutes of this episode. It will cheer me up in a heartbeat.
Maybe I'll go on Cameo and, charge like way too much money for an E Street band.
Like those guys that type poems in the parks, and will write your wife a love poem on demand, and for like $10 or draw like something cute. Yeah, you could totally be like, have a little sign at the square, E Street Band intros, $5.
And it'll be like, what now? What? You're gonna what?
You're gonna like.
Yeah. All right. So tonight, let's get down to business. Tonight we are here to talk about Bruce Springsteen's iconic 1982 album, Nebraska, the album that almost wasn't. And so that means it's fair game for us to talk about the Nebraska 82 expanded edition box set, the Warren Zanes book Deliver Me From Nowhere, the Scott Cooper film, Springsteen Delivered Me From Nowhere. All of that is fair game. But first, a couple of remarks. Nebraska dropped on September 30th, 1982. Nebraska 82 just recently dropped, which gave us the long-awaited release of Electric Nebraska, plus some outtakes and the performance of Springsteen at the Count Basie Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey. For me, Plus, you've got a remastered version of the original album. For me, the get of it was Electric Nebraska. The Count Basie material, a nice little bonus, but if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have known. But really, I mean, getting Electric Nebraska was a revelation, not unlike the recent remasters of some replacements albums that came out in the last couple years. Also, fun fact, Debt's No Honest Man Can Pay, the show I host, is a reference to not one, but two songs on Nebraska, Atlantic City and Johnny 99. So tonight we're going to talk about the lore and the legacy of Nebraska. And so that means we're going to talk about the historical impact, the cultural impact, the impact that had on the music industry and on musical artists throughout the world. And not to mention, I don't have the facts and figures, but were I a gambling man, I would bet good money that the songs on Nebraska are the most covered songs in Springsteen's catalog. So, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of spouting too many facts. I'm sure these will be sprinkled throughout, but I think it's probably a good time for me to just talk about the music and what it means to me. We were all waiting for Bruce to come out with the album that was going to make him a household name. I think that when thousands of years from now, historians look upon the career of Bruce Springsteen, they'll remember three albums: Born to Run as the album that put him on the map, Born in the USA as the album that made him a household name, and Nebraska, where he defined what it means to be a singer-songwriter. And he also redefined what it means to be a musical artist, because Bruce the motivation behind it was he just wanted to save some money. Because he was such a perfectionist in the studio, he was often dipping into his own pocket for recording sessions, and he just wanted to just reduce costs, record demos at home, and bring them into the band. But what he didn't count on was the fact that these songs from Nebraska would come pouring out of him, and that the recordings of these songs would just have that X factor that the studio could not recreate, and that these songs would become the album. It's so fascinating. And so many bands that call themselves lo-fi, would they be doing what they're doing without Bruce? Because he just simply used what they called the Tascam Porta studio, and it was relatively affordable. So much so, mine and Joe's mutual friend David Manchell bought one when he was in his early 20s and started recording like a fiend. So I guess it was always available, but I think Springsteen kind of put it up there and made people realize that, yeah, you can be a bedroom recording artist. I didn't expect to like Nebraska as much as I did when it came out. And honestly, I didn't buy it immediately because I was still in my infancy with my Springsteen fandom. I was at the point where I owned Born to Run and I owned Darkness on the Edge of Town, which is my favorite record ever. But I was not yet at the point where I had become a boots on the ground fan. I was just kind of like
a slappy.
I was a slappy.
You weren't there yet fully.
So, but I did hear a couple of songs, ironically, on the radio. That I know that Nebraska is infamous for not having a lot of radio airplay, but one station back home, they did their weekly countdown, and Nebraska, again, defying the odds, it went to number 3 on the Billboard 200. So it made the top 20 of the local rock station. And Sunday nights I would hear them, and they only 2 songs they played were Atlantic City and Open All Night. And Open All Night really kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and Atlantic City I thought was very cool. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to rush out and buy it. But when I do, I borrowed a copy from somebody when I was like, or I don't know if I like taped it off of Joe or borrowed it from somebody in college, but I think I first listened to it around 1984, like post Born in the USA. And Born in the USA is fine, but man, the songs from Nebraska, they stick to your ribs. And it hit me in a way that I didn't expect it to. I wasn't expecting to like it that much because, well, acoustic album, singer-songwriter, I was not mature enough to know the breadth of it all. But it was easy to connect with these songs like Used Cars. I was already a fan of Atlantic City and Open All Night. Reason to Believe hit me immediately. And I don't care what Bruce says. I know that he said that he wrote it as a cynical song, but I can't help but feel some semblance of hope when I listen to it. I know I'm not the only one because Jeremy Allen White said something similar himself. State Trooper is so menacingly badass. Highway Patrolman, I'm like the strength of this album is that he told great stories. He was already a great storyteller to begin with, but now he stripped everything away and the stories were up front and the songs were so much more engaging than any 10 acoustic songs had a right to be. And it kind of opened my mind to the possibilities because I was already down the alt country rabbit hole, or was starting to go the alt country rabbit hole. And I had another thought in my head that just popped out. Oh yeah. And the other thing that I like about this is that because of the subject matter, because it's about people who are doing not so great things, either because they just have no soul or because their backs are up against the wall. And there's stories about people who are just trying to hang on and trying to get from day to day. And because it was released like during Reagan era America, early 80s, there's something about it that says to me, this is a basic building block of the punk folk movement. To me, it's kind of like the logical connector between Woody Guthrie and Billy Bragg. And you can say a lot of things about, like a lot of the lo-fi artists who are inspired by Nebraska, but there's just a lot of singer-songwriters who were inspired. But I was surprised to learn. I knew that a lot of people were inspired by this record, but some of them really surprised me, and I have them here in my notes. Nebraska had an impact on Kelly Clarkson. I've never heard the album, but it's called For My December for Emma. Maybe Rick knows about it. Bon Iver, The Killers. I knew about that, but I didn't know that Kelly Clarkson was a fan. There's even a couple of singer-songwriters who actually released their own track-by-track cover of Nebraska. One artist who shall not be named because just a garbage human being, and singer-songwriter Aoife O'Donovan. I'm not going to bore you with the complete list of people who were inspired by Bruce, but the thing that's great about this album is that it's staying power. It's defiant. And I thank God that Bruce dug his heels in the dirt and said, this is the album. No, nothing else there are no substitutes. This is the album. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I don't know if I agree with his no tour, no singles, no press, and I think that ironically, no singles, no tour, no press might have been a good way to promote the movie because it's been so divisive. And I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole about it just yet. I love the book, Warren Zane's Deliver Me From Nowhere, and I like the movie a lot. I was concerned whether the movie would be good. I'm always leery about biopics, but when a biopic chooses a sliver of a person's career, and I think the best biopic to date is Love and Mercy, starring John Cusack, about Brian Wilson. And this, I mean, as I was watching it, I noted I had like maybe minor quibbles, but afterwards, for the life of me, I couldn't remember what they were. And as I read the reviews, the one thing that stood out to me is that, well, if you're not really a Bruce fan or a fan of Nebraska, then this movie probably isn't for you. And I think in a way, the over promotion probably didn't do any favors, because people had expectations of, oh, it's going to be Bruce wall to wall, him in the stadium, rock, rock, rock. And there was a little bit of that there for context, as it should be, because the seeds of Nebraska's songs sprouted with The River, the album that to this day captures the live E Street Band as they were meant to be. And you can hear it in songs like Stolen Car and Wreck on the Highway. And it's public knowledge that the songs from that would become Born in the USA were written and recorded around the same time as Nebraska. As a matter of fact, they had 8 songs from Born in the USA in the can during the Nebraska process. And Bruce still said, nope, I'm not going to toss my hat in the ring. That'll wait. He had that much confidence in himself. But he was also dealing with these demons and hounds nipping at his heels. And I think the movie and the book captures that perfectly. And I think that if they had just released it quietly as the indie film and just called it Deliver Me From Nowhere and not raise the expectations of like middle America, maybe the movie would have been more unanimously critically acclaimed. And maybe someday it will get its flowers. But for the time being, I like the movie. Do I love it? I don't know. But I like it. I like it enough. I don't know if I'm going to see it again, because I just generally don't see movies a second time unless they feature the Avengers. But that's my own quirk. But I'm going to open up now. I think I've said enough. Mark, you are our guest. And from what I understand, you are as much of a defender of all that is righteous on E Street as I am. So what are your thoughts on Nebraska?
Well, Nebraska is a very special album for me. Bruce is tied into so much of, I can't imagine my life without Bruce Springsteen music in it. And so much of my life, I feel, has been scored by Springsteen. And yet it's funny, because I do honestly remember the first time I heard Born to Run. I had a very enthusiastic friend in high school. I grew up in New Jersey. So, of course, the joke is you have to like Bruce Springsteen. It's the law. And I do remember listening to Born to Run with a friend, with a dear, dear friend. And I was like, it's okay. Like, it was okay. And I freely admit, it didn't knock me out the door. I mean, at that point in my life, this would have probably, 77 or whatever. I was a very big, I listened to I had that older friend who introduced me to, Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith. He took me, my first concert was Aerosmith. So I was like a rock head. And, right. Born to Run was fine, but I wasn't bowled away by it. But then I was very fortunate in college, my sophomore year. That's the other thing about Nebraska, is it came out in September of 82. And that fall of 82, I was living in Virginia. I went to school at Lynchburg College in Virginia. And leaving New Jersey and moving to Virginia to go to school, I think cemented my permanent love for New Jersey. Like, then I suddenly realized, wait, everybody treats me like I'm a Jersey guy. I guess I'm a Jersey guy. And then I had a friend who was also a Jersey guy. And we literally sat in his dorm room one night, and he played for me. A friend had given him, he had, of all things, a reel-to-reel. And a friend had given him a reel-to-reel recording of a Springsteen concert from maybe Long Island or something. I don't remember exactly, but we sat up all night, for 4 hours or whatever, listening to this incredible concert. And that was it. I got it. It was like, that was the thing. Like, I'll always credit my friend Carl for making me get it. And then how that ties into Nebraska was, so in the fall of '82, I am now a confirmed Springsteen fanatic because of Carl playing the music for me, and he played it all the time in his car. The very first new album of Springsteen's that I bought was Nebraska, which was so different from, like, and I agree with you. I love Darkness on the Edge of Town has become one of my all-time favorite albums, and I just love everything about it. And yet, hearing Nebraska, I knew this was something different. I don't necessarily even remember that my friend Carl loved the album, but it just resonated with me in a way that so it came so closely on the heels of my newfound love of Bruce Springsteen, and then Nebraska, and then a few short years later, and I actually dragged it out too, the live collection. This is actually a collection of cassette tapes. That's how old this thing is. And they still play, by the way. But when I heard the live versions, the side that was the live versions of the songs from Nebraska even took it to another level for me. And I was lost. I loved him so much. It became, he became his music became the center of my life, and has stayed that way, really since 1982. The first time I saw him, I got to see him on the Born in the USA tour. The very first time I saw him was in Virginia Beach, in January of '85. And that, that was, again, it was friends who loved Springsteen who brought me along for the ride. And then I became that friend. I took 3 of my closest friends in 90. It must have been maybe 80. I took a bunch of friends to the Tunnel of Love tour at the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And it just kind of went from there. So I like I said, I can't imagine my life without Springsteen music in it. But it's so much of that is around Nebraska, and particularly those live recordings of Nebraska from the 75 to 85 collection.
Do you have a favorite song from Nebraska?
Yeah, Reason to Believe really knocks me out. It's the first. I think it may be, other than Thunder Road, obviously not Nebraska, but I think it was one of the first songs that I learned all the lyrics to, and that I could sing along with. I don't know if Gus has ever mentioned, by the way, I used to serenade him when he was a baby with Thunder Road, because I knew all the lines, I knew all the words. And here's another little, maybe overly personal, but the first time that my wife felt Gus kick, Bruce Springsteen was playing on the radio in the car.
Oh, wow.
And of course I took it as a sign.
Do you remember what song it was?
I wish I did. I wish I could cop to that. That unfortunately has left my head. Although the funny thing is, one of Gus's early when he was, just little more than a toddler, his favorite thing for me to play was Old Dan Tucker. Off the Seeger sessions. He loved that song. So
that's another record I didn't expect to love as much as I do, which means that I love when I'm delightfully surprised like that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about Bruce that's been so fun is the discovery of things, or discovery of recordings, or going into a record shop in Jersey and finding, some of these songs that I'd never heard before. Or like I remember finding Janie, Don't Lose Your Heart on the flip side of a 45. And then slowly putting together a cassette tape with all of these Bruce songs that I could find that none of my friends had heard before, and it really became it touched my heart in such a way, and still does to this day. I mean, all these extra releases, the Nebraska collection, the 7 albums over the summer. I listened to all of them back to back. Driving to New Jersey back in July, I was driving up to visit my sister, and it couldn't have made for a better trip to just listen to all of these and all of this new music. It felt like I'm getting new Bruce music while I'm driving to New Jersey. This is too much.
That is a gift. I the analog I have to that, when I moved down here to Charlotte from Detroit, the Seeger Sessions had just come out, and I have Sirius. I've been a subscriber like for going on 20 years now. So I had it on E Street Radio for most of the time, and there were like Seeger Sessions, which just like heavily in rotation. So that was largely my soundtrack. Before I forget, Mark, what part of New Jersey are you from?
I grew up in Westfield, which is very near. My parents are originally from Elizabeth and Union.
Okay.
So that whole area there, and my sister still lives in West Orange. So really kind of a north central.
Okay. Now, I ask because my dad's side of the family is from all over Bergen County. So anytime somebody's from New Jersey, I got to ask, where are you from?
Yes, it would be exit 136.
Yeah, that's kind of like in Michigan, we go, I'm from here. So we have our own thing. Yeah, and whereas, in New Jersey, you're required by law to be a Springsteen fan. In Detroit, you're required to be a Bob Seger fan. When you move into the neighborhood, they slide a copy of Night Moves under your door.
I believe that. And, when I was in grad school, I had a dear friend who loved to needle me about my love for Springsteen. And anytime like a Bob Seger song, we worked in the shop together in the theater, in the shop building sets for theater. And we always had the radio on. And if Seeger came on, or Steve Miller, his first thing, he'd look at me and he'd say, "Is that a Springsteen song?"
Oh, twist the knife. Twist the knife.
He was a hard man to work with.
All right.
And I also mirror everything you said about the movie too. I liked it. I don't know that I loved it. It was certainly not, I don't think it was, and I appreciated that it wasn't made to be a movie to get people excited about his music necessarily.
Right.
In the way that I think the Bob Dylan movie was. But I had I enjoyed, there were things about it. It looked like New Jersey, which I appreciated. It looked just as the houses looked, particularly that part of Southern Jersey is pretty grim. And I appreciated that reality of it.
Yep.
And that, Jeremy Allen White is just an interesting actor to watch.
Yeah.
He is kind of a master of minimalism as an actor, and I appreciated that. I never felt like he was overdoing it,
right.
Which I guess has been a criticism of the movie in some ways. But
most of the criticisms are. I read somebody say, fans of Springsteen aren't going to like this because it's depressing. I'm like, you don't know Springsteen fans, because the ones who love Springsteen, the ones who get Nebraska, are going to get this. Thank you, Mark. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Amy, you are probably the person, I'm going to take a wild guess and say you are the person who has experienced the least exposure to Nebraska. So I want to hear what you guys say.
Sure. I'm not born when Nebraska came out, so didn't get a chance to get in on it early. my family wasn't a Bruce Springsteen family. I didn't really grow up with it. It's on the radio, it's ambient, I know Born to Run, but it was, I guess, 10, 12 years ago, I got a cheapo ticket to see Bruce and the E Street Band at the hockey stadium, nosebleed seats, very last row, but it was like $12 or something. And I'm like, sure, why not? And so I grabbed a friend and we went downtown, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. Well, the first surprise I had was that Tom Morello was in the E Street Band at the time, which was like one of my favorite guitarists. So I was already blown away. But then like 2.5 hours later, when Bruce is still running up and down the stage, I'm like, that's a rock star.
Yep.
And, just the musicality of it, the energy. And yeah, the more I sit down with these songs, the songwriting of it. I have not, even though I have the album, I haven't listened through it until this last weekend. And I sat with the lyrics, like understanding what each of the songs are about, because I'm more of a music first kind of person. And this is not a music first album. It's very much a lyrics album. And I think I get it. I think by the end of the album, I was being very affected by what was happening in the songs and feeling very sad. And it was good. Let's see. Do I have anything specific to say about the different songs? I liked the story songs. I liked all the murders. I recently watched No Country for Old Men, and it's that same vibe of American Western, driving around in cars and shooting people, and it's a vibe.
It is a vibe. And, I don't know if you knew any of the background of but he was reading a lot of Flannery O'Connor at the time. And the movie, the Terrence Malick film Badlands was a huge influence on him. And the weirdest influence of all was this electro punk duo from the CBGB scene called Suicide, had a huge impact on songs like State Trooper.
Yeah. I listened to Johnny Teardrops this morning, which was a weird vibe for preparing coffee, but
there's a direct corollary between Frankie Teardrop and State Trooper. It's like those blood curdling whoops. Yeah.
And that the whoop sounded familiar, and I think it sounds like a My Morning Jacket Jim James whoop. I think that's where I've heard it more recently.
It sounds like maybe we should do an episode called Whoops, There It Is.
Yeah.
I'll be here all week, try the veal. So what else you got to say about it?
I think that's about it.
All right.
But I appreciate you putting me onto it, and I feel like I understand y'all a bit more of why this sort of music gets to you, is that this is an incredible album and it's important. So and I like learning. This copy of it had some liner notes that I think were written by the author of the book. So I got a compressed version of the history.
Nice.
But just.
Do you have a favorite song off of it?
I think My Father's House made me feel very sad. So I think that was very affecting to me. Yeah. And I think the title track is just the coolest story to me.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Like a murder spree. I don't know.
We might have to have a Badlands watch party.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Joe, you're up next.
All right. What are we talking? What's the topic?
Oh, touche.
I've talked about my relationship to Nebraska before. It's really it's definitely the only Springsteen album I own. Certainly one of the few albums I've bought 3 times, maybe 4. I don't know. I just got the box set. I have anyway. I respect Springsteen a lot. I like a dog choking mother load of his songs. I'm just not into Springsteen world. I read his biography. I read the Zane's book, and I rode my bike in the rain to buy Nebraska. I told you all that before. At the same time, I bought Combat Rock, and it's been the one I really bonded with. I think I was probably reading Flannery O'Connor at the time too, or carrying the book around anyway. I don't know what connected me with it, but I was, the bit of desolateness in me that I heard in that music. It wasn't really a world I could relate to, being, a suburban Jew. But it was, the desolation really, these spoke to me across all things. Favorite song is Reason to Believe. I guess I feel sort of yanked around hearing You Meant It Ironically, because I think he's the only person who hears that, which is an amazing thing about how you can create a work of art. You put it out in the world and people take it for something else, and it sort of becomes that thing, and I can see how it would be ironic. There's a guy poking a dead dog,
Yeah.
That dog doesn't have any reason to believe in anything anymore.
No.
But it's a step beyond cynicism to see all that crap in the world and get up the next day, and then you get up the next day because you have to, and because you need to, and that's the kernel of the seed of belief, I think. So it does make sense, even if you meant it cynically. You get something powerful out of it and affecting. The box set, I was like, I'm in for this ride, but my bar is set low. I put it on in the order it was out there, and it took me a while. I never really got to the Count Basie set, but I found the demos awesome and invigorating, and the electric Nebraska was way better than I thought it would be. I read The Guardian as my primary source of news, even entertainment. I follow their stuff, and they have this typical British cynicism in the reviews. Was nothing is going to be good enough, especially if it's something everybody else has embraced. Their take was that, all that other stuff doesn't really add anything to it. But I went into that with, this is The Guardian's review, and I was totally taken aback by how those other two bits stand on their own.
Right.
Especially the electric stuff. The version of Atlantic City is great. It's it's a testament to how good a songwriter he is, that those songs are so flexible.
Oh yeah, and the best version of Born in the USA ever.
Yeah. I thought that whatever they played in the movie was good too, and that's where I went with my 12-year-old kid. We dragged him along to that, and he's into movies, but he doesn't know from Springsteen. And, that's Born in the USA. That scene with Born in the USA and the power station was where he really started rocking.
So
that part.
So what did Henry think of it?
The movie? His reviews on Letterboxd. You can see it. He gave it a 3.5. He views movies very analytically and breaking down the component parts in it, and he does it in a way that I can't really relate to.
Wow.
And talking about Oscar chances and this or that, and I'm like, where did it hit you? How did it hit you? And I think things hit him. Not saying he's like, devoid of like emotion, but I think he, it's a way for kids to grasp stuff.
Right.
Is the everybody loves analytics and baseball and movies and gambling and whatever people are doing, but he liked the movie. I felt the movie was fine. The previews made it look worse than it is, and I had a pretty low bar. I too don't like biopics. I thought they missed an opportunity with the father. I thought if they gave him 5 more minutes to explain why he was in such a state. Didn't they lose a daughter?
Oh, yeah.
There was one scene in the movie. You remember they focused on this picture of a child, like a very small child. And I don't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but I feel like, there was a lot of reasons for his misery and they spent no time on him. And that was huge, and that's something that Bruce himself needed to escape, whether he knew it or not.
Right.
Did. But I enjoyed the movie and how they describe the artistic process and the struggle in this creative bit. And one of my main complaints about the movie is that it's Jeremy Allen White. He's good, but his neck is huge. It's so fucking distracting. Like that, I'm not going to call Bruce a pencil neck, but it was like that guy has an offensive lineman's neck. And I'm like, that's not, it's.
I will say there was a moment when the camera focused on Jeremy Allen White's arms, and I was thinking in 1982, Bruce wishes his arms looked like that.
Yeah,
it was still a few years before he'd pump up. So
I thought that same thing too. Like, they had to get him pumped up for one of those later scenes, but it's not like nobody's committed like De Niro to, gain 40 pounds and then lose 40 pounds.
They gave him inflatable prosthetics. So, all right, thanks, Joe. Rick, what say you?
This album is. I echo what Amy and others have said about the storytelling is so compelling, and I'm glad that you confirmed the Flannery O'Connor thing. I was thinking that. I was like, this has a real Flannery O'Connor vibe. Scott, I'm curious as to where you would put this in sort of like in the annals of American music, because when I'm listening to it, I was like thinking of the Sun sessions and hearing Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis, those types of influences there. Yeah. It is. It's again. It's brilliant storytelling. I'm a sucker for Bruce's, heart on your sleeve. Got to get out of this town. Desperation type of stuff. As you were talking, I'm wondering, is Mellencamp listening to this? You get a shift from the early Johnny Cougar and then the John Cougar Mellencamp and then Scarecrow, which is in the storytelling vein. So it's a lot different.
Definitely. He leveled up with Scarecrow. I wouldn't doubt that Nebraska made an impact on him.
Yeah. My favorite song. I'm just gonna I'm gonna pick what might seem the low fruit, but I love Atlantic City. I think it is. This is that line. Everything dies, baby. That's a fact. Yep. It's that realism and that sense of hope against hope. I mean, this is a desperate character whose back is against the wall, but he's still talking about these wild dreams that are probably not going to pay out.
Right.
But you buy into it. But one more quick thing. I love the box set, hearing the outtakes, the way the songs developed. I think that if Reagan had heard that version of Born in the USA, there's no way they would have made the mistake of making it or trying to make it an anthem.
Oh yeah.
For his reelection, no, it's a great album.
So, anything else to add?
Yeah.
Going once.
Yep. Nope.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
I did want to say one thing real quick.
Yes.
while I'm not a huge fan of other people's versions of Bruce's songs,
Right.
I do remember how much I loved Johnny Cash's Johnny 99.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I just felt like it was one of those moments where an artist just took something in it and just turned it just a little bit. And I always wondered, I'd love to have known what Bruce's reaction to it was, because there's just the way that he turns a phrase in that song that was so beautiful and so, I mean, it was so distinctly Johnny Cash, but it was just one of those moments where I just loved that, his take on Johnny 99.
I'm sure that Bruce was over the moon.
State Trooper is a great cover by the
it's great.
Cowboy Junkies is pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, and Steve Earle's cover. Steve Wynn does a cover of it. There's a album that came out, I think, like 2000 called Badlands, a tribute to Springsteen's Nebraska, and it's on Sub Pop. And I was never a huge fan of the song Mansion on the Hill until I heard Crooked Fingers cover of it. And it was the first time I ever heard Crooked Fingers. So that kind of reframed Mansion on the Hill for me and introduced me to Crooked Fingers, who at the time I didn't realize was the dude from Archers of Loaf, but that's another story. Last but not least, Professor Sunfrog.
So, Joe, you stole it right out of my mouth. I've been waiting for 46 minutes to talk about the Cowboy Junkies cover of State Trooper because, my 80s were so, like Greenberg has already mentioned, so inspired by your musical taste. And I remember how into the Cowboy Junkies you were, Joe, and how you had me listening to that. And, it's weird because I did not associate that song with Bruce Springsteen or Nebraska. I had no truck in Springsteen's Nebraska at that time, but I love that Cowboy Junkie song. It was last year old that I finally figured out, or maybe even this year old, it was in the last year or so that I finally figured out that Kangaroo was a Big Star song written by Alex Chilton. But then the first This Mortal Coil album, 4AD album that was adjacent to the Cocteau Twins, that Kangaroo is deeply knitted into me. And it's weird because there's like, Big Star is one of those bands that because I knew what Peter Buck said about them, I felt like I knew what Big Star was, even though I didn't listen to them until just like last year. Joe, you know what Flannery O'Connor says because of what Michael Stipe told you she said, and you carried the book around in your bag, even if you hadn't read all the stories. Nebraska's like that for me. When I finally listened to it, it was like getting to know an old friend that I'd known my whole life. But Mark almost shamed me on Facebook when I admitted that I only finally listened to Nebraska like within the last year or so. I knew Magic, I knew Seeger Sessions because that was in the mid-aughts when Mark was taking me to Springsteen shows, and we got to go with our late deceased friend Kurt Eisen to go to the Bridgestone, and you got us pit tickets.
I never got to see that tour. I'm jealous.
So around the Magic period, it was very, very but I didn't go much further than what was current at that time. And then, of course, that box set, Born in the USA, Born to Run. I mean, I have some literacy, but I kind of always missed Springsteen, but missed Nebraska. But I feel like it was kind of like, when I finally figured out who Grand Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers were, I knew all along what it was. I just didn't know that was it. That was the missing piece. Same with Uncle Tupelo. Like I was so into Sunvolt and Wilco long before I finally got around to listening to Uncle Tupelo. I kind of went, I kind of went with it backwards. So I went into this film pretty green. I have the Zane's book, but I never finished it. And I was completely, I was blown away by this film. Now, everybody, Rick for sure knows, but I've got a kind of I think you guys know from the My Morning Jacket, Jason Isbell episode back in the spring, I've got a love-hate relationship with the esteemed American rock critic, Stephen Hayden. I try to keep up with him because I think he's got good takes and good recommendations, but I get so annoyed and so mad at him, sometimes. And he was wearing me out because like every week he was like, oh, I've heard this movie is terrible. Like he hadn't even seen it yet. And he was saying, my friends were texting me, oh, they hated it. And then when he finally gets around to seeing it and reviewing it, it's all of like 1 minute. He said, it's really not a good movie, but I love it. And I'll probably cry, at least, if I have to see this movie on a plane, I'm going to cry. if I have to watch it on a plane, it's going to make me cry. I thought the movie was phenomenal. I definitely think if I was a nerd about this, the way some people were about A Complete Unknown, I might have gotten a little bit upset about some of the changes, like what Joe was saying about not developing the family backstory. But the part that really blew me away, and I'm glad Amy mentioned this already, that scene where he's laying on the floor and he's listening to that suicide, and he's just bottoming out. And I was not prepared for what a great movie about mental health awareness this is. I mean, it's kind of after school, especially about, and the moral of the story is go to therapy, kids, but I freaking love this aspect of the movie. I think it's extremely risky for Bruce to sign off on this as his, as a great living artist about whom a biopic is made, which is there are very few people. Most of the biopics are made about people that after they're dead, Walk to the Line, Johnny Cash is already dead. I think we could narrow it down, Freddie Mercury and the Queen, dead, So I guess Elton John, he was still alive. But my point being this is I think it's an incredibly brave to go so niche. Scott, I think you alluded to this. People were kind of whining and complaining why. I read one this was a stupid review. Why isn't it as good as this documentary I like? And it's I'm glad you like that documentary. It's like apples and oranges, dude. I'm glad you have your favorite Springsteen documentary. Please don't let me steal that joy from you. But that's not a review of Deliver Me From Nowhere. That's you saying you really like this documentary.
Right.
The John Landau character absolutely blew my mind.
Right.
The synergy between him and his manager, and then him trying the Jeremy Allen White version of Springsteen, trying to explain to him that I don't want to make it right. I don't want to make it nice. I like it dirty. I like it. There was something intangible about those recordings, and I love. I listened to one of the interviews with Zanes that he's of course getting brought back out on the podcast circuit now that it's a movie. So there's a lot of good recent interviews with him on the out in the podcast verse about the stupid little toy, like how Bruce elevated this very kind of mid device, the 4-track home cassette. It's like, do you guys remember those mini cassettes? What were those called? They were really big in the zeros. Everybody was getting those mini DV. What are those?
The mini discs.
Yeah,
the mini discs.
The mini discs. They weren't even cassette. They were these weird ass everybody was taking their mini disc players doing field recordings with mini disc players. That thing is such a weird kind of and I love it, Scott, that you said, oh, but my friend had one, and I think that's the beauty of it. Yep. I think.
Imagine if Alan Lomax had one.
Exactly. That would have been incredible. But my point is this. I think it is a very risky topic for a Springsteen biopic, what I try to wrap this part of my comment up is I think the things that people didn't like about this movie were exactly the things that I loved about this movie. How dark, how weird, how niche. Yeah. I definitely liked it for the for the arc of the creative process. I love that his bibliography was out, all the books on the coffee table that he was reading, his influences in his bibliography were right out there.
Those were books he was discovering too. It wasn't like those were new to him. So where you discover something like that just kicks you in the butt, that's pretty amazing. The relationship he had with O'Connor's books at that point, we've all had that with books where they're just, we want to inhabit them.
The album itself, Rick also mentioned, I absolutely love Atlantic. The two things about the songs I was going to say is how much I absolutely love Atlantic City, how cool it was this summer to visit Atlantic City while I didn't do like Mark and listen to 9 hours of Springsteen on my drive to the Northeast, but I was very excited about listening to that song in particular, going to Atlantic City. And Joe beat me to the punch, but I was really thinking about State Trooper. I think, and when I finally got around to Nebraska, part of me was like, oh, I already know some of these songs, you know? So like, even though I'd never sat down and listened to the album front to back until a year or so ago, I definitely, when I finally got my feet into Nebraska, I was like, oh, I know some of this music. I mean, I think because it's the canon. I had no idea until I saw this movie that that the Nebraska sessions were also the incubator for Born in the USA. And I love the framing. And apparently Zanes does this in the book, because on the podcast, he was adamant about the framing of like, no, I'm not going to make my breakout album that's going to take me to the next level of the stratosphere. I'm going to release this other thing instead, because of the creative integrity, and for me needing to sort of unburden myself of this, you know, psychological like gauntlet that I've been going through. I just admire everybody, from the author of the book to everybody who worked on this film to Springsteen himself, for allowing this to be the Springsteen movie that is the first of the Springsteen movies. Hopefully that we'll get more later, and another period of his career will be treated in a future biopic. But so, Scott, thank you for convening this conversation tonight.
We needed to, because I don't know if I'm the only one who's ever noticed it, but like throughout the several months, years we've been doing this, Nebraska kept coming up. It was like, despite the fact that Darkness on the Edge of Town is my favorite album ever and my favorite Bruce album, in the back of my head, I knew that Nebraska would be the Springsteen album we would need to dissect, and I feel like we made the right choice. You said something a couple of seconds ago that reminded me of a quote from Eric Flanagan, who wrote the liner notes to the Nebraska box set, and he doesn't include this quote in the box set. Instead, it's in this little promo film that you can see on YouTube for, I think it's like a good 10 minutes, which is cool. But he says, I think Nebraska is essentially the gold standard of Bruce's narrative songwriting. It's extraordinary that it happened at all, and it's become iconic among other artists. If you want to do something different than expected, it's almost like doing your own Nebraska. And I think that he nailed it right on the head there. It's like earlier this year, Caroline Rose, who I adore, put out a record that just demos she recorded on her iPhone. So she's like, she's going to the next level with it. She's like, using this motherfucker. And she's like, yeah, I might record them in the studio later on, but I feel pretty strong about these recordings the way they are. And she released them as is, and I saw her at the Evening Muse playing these songs on this tour, and it's a great record. And there's so many artists out there who have you don't even need the courage to do it. It's like the whole DIY ethic of creating music in your bedroom. I don't want to say that, you know, Springsteen started it all, but he kind of sort of did. Or at least he's the one who had enough juice to call attention to the fact that he was doing it. So,
yeah. And Scott, something else that I think I noticed in this movie that I think is worth saying is I think a lot of today's artists that are making such comparably, lo-fi or innovative moves were already outside the apparatus. Like the entire music ecosystem has moved away from the apparatus. The apparatus is a dinosaur. The apparatus is, the swamp or big corporate. So much of so many bands have their own labels. They manage their own touring, but he was captive to the apparatus. And so he said this, and that's the part of why I love that Landau character so much, is because he was like, I think other people might have either quit or, the way that the manager finally bought into the creative vision and then went to battle with the record label people over it. Because I think back in those days, the apparatus was everything. We've talked about this a little bit, I think, on between you and me, Scott, but maybe on this pod we've talked about this. But when I interviewed Maria last year, I finally figured out that she doesn't even consider Shelter to be a Lone Justice album.
That was revelation.
there was the original Lone Justice album, which was a cowpunk band that was her LA people. But the band that recorded Shelter was like Jimmy Iovine, and the record label kind of just assembled this new band around her to try to go more for this. She calls it Heartland synth, but this more kind of arena rock sound. Very different but it was very much a corporate. She was on Geffen. It was very much like, and we don't have those machinations. Most artists don't have some artists probably would love to have the privilege of having those machinations because of some of the perks that go with it, but you just don't have that anymore. The label sent in this band, and
I'm so glad that she said that about Shelter, because I remember struggling with that. I was like, I'm like, it's good, but I'm like, in comparison to that first album, it was like night and day. And I'm like, I remember you and I sitting with her in the lobby of her hotel after that show, and she sounded really enthusiastic about it. And I was going, I'm not sure if she believes what she's saying right now, but I get it. And I'm so glad that she had that frank conversation with you about it, because I think I appreciate Shelter more now. And framed as a solo record, yes, I get it. It definitely is not an LJ record, but that was a great interview. And before we get too further down the road, I'm like, we've already gone into overtime, but I love that. I did a full episode about Nebraska on my show, shameless plug, Debts No Honest Man Can Pay, on Apple Podcasts. I encourage you all to check it out if there's anybody out there watching this. Andy, thank you for handing me the reins. Mark, Joe, Amy, Rick, as always. Gus, you lose. You weren't here.
So this is we've been doing the annual. Rick and I did the first annual end of the year one, and I think Greenberg, you were on the first one back in 2020. Pandemic year, and then this thing's now we're finishing our second full year.
Unbelievable.
So I don't know who's up. I think it's got to be around Gus's turn, but I don't know what this Oracle, you guys. Just to brag on him for a minute, he's running game on the whole community. The independent college journalism has always had this we don't represent the university. We're not the public relations department farm team for the university. We're an independent, watchdog, bulldog kind of, and he's fully embraced the collegiate journalism ethic of being a thorn in the side of the institution, which I've seen has historically been true on many campuses, on many newspapers, but he's doing just a phenomenal job. But he said for sure he's going to come for the end of the year, and our annual visit from Birmingham Scott. Hopefully Birmingham Scott will be back. So we've got that.
He's not Birmingham Scott anymore.
What?
He's not Birmingham Scott anymore. He moved to Kansas.
No.
Yes.
No. Actually, no. That's a quirk of Facebook. He grew up in Salina, Kansas.
Oh, motherfucker!
Yeah, he's still in Birmingham.
Yeah. Facebook was updating his, and I think he's off the book. He said, "Go to my Substack," which is so funny because I bought a sticker at the Cookeville Art Fair, and this is not against any of my personal friends, Birmingham Scott included, who is big on, but the stickers, Rick Quinn said, "I don't care about your Substack." It was just a sticker they were selling at the fair. Yes, I know, everybody good. Okay, so Monday, December the 15th, I believe, is what we've got on. Is that right? Is that a Monday?
I do not know.
Monday, December 15th will be our 2-hour albums of the year episode. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but Mark, you were such a vital part of this pod tonight. I think you're welcome back anytime, and that includes.
Oh, thank you. It's been a delight.
That includes next month. If you can, you have to be able to come up with 10 records. Joe Guinness, by the way, said my list doesn't have to be current records. I'll come up with 10 records, but they might not have come out this year. So we are very much flexible. Now, Scott Greenberg.
Grateful you are.
Yeah, no, we are grateful. We're so grateful. So
Scott can have whatever he wants on his list.
I know that Scott Greenberg and Rick Quinn and I, though, and Amy Rock, I think, is the same. We obsess about these lists. We really get very involved in our listicles. We are very.
Can I share a Bruce fun fact?
Yes,
that
please.
I've been trying to slip in for many gatherings we've had.
It better be fun.
Yeah, I tell my Henry that says fun fact. I'm like, is it fun? Be fun? Don't let me down, man. Don't disappoint your dad.
Better be fun.
914 Studios doesn't exist anymore, but it's about a half a mile from where I work and maybe 5 miles from where I live. That's where Bruce recorded Born to Run. I think The Dictators recorded there. It was in his bio or his memoir, he talks about, this was the place to go to get away from the city and all the pressures. So, there was a Korean barbecue on that spot or something now. That's been shut down, but there's somebody actually put up an unofficial historical marker. It's not like an official state marker in blue and gold, but it's the spot that Springsteen recorded Born to Run, and I pass it most every day.
Well, I'll tell you guys, if you have not, like Scott Greenberg and I, gone to visit the Guinness Estate in New City, New York, the Hudson River Valley is magical. And I still I could have felt like I was in I felt like I was in some kind of resort town, or it was just enchanted. The whole area up and down that river valley and then up into the Catskills just to the west just feels so magical and enchanting. But I still can't get over the fact that I could get on a train. It did take a freaking long time, but I could get on a train by Joe's house and within a couple hours be in Manhattan. It's mind blowing. It's really, really beautiful. And I wish one day they're going to get that train from Cookeville to Nashville, Amy, and we could go see each other on the Cookeville to Nashville train.
There should be a line that connects all the villes, Knoxville, Nashville, Cookeville.
Yes.
We're working on some of our leaders are even talking about that actually might one day happen. So speaking of, you want to talk about magical, Joe? When Joe took me to see Chuck Prophet at Leon Helm's farm, I'm like, Woodstock is fucking magical. I love that place. I could live there.
Yeah. Woodstock's surprisingly great for a hippie town.
We did. I wouldn't normally do this because it's so expensive and so niche. But my mommy was treating. We took Joe out to a very fancy Woodstock, new American kind of foodie, super foodie. Oh my God, it was so good. It was one of the best meals I've ever had. I loved that night so much, Joe. I'll be back, and Joe's going to Georgia, you guys, for the Drive-By Truckers Heathens Homecoming.
Yeah.
So get your tickets if you want to meet up with Joe in Athens in February. That's coming up really soon. I've
never gone. I decided, screw it, I'm going to go. That's the same. I've been doing that attitude with concert purchases. I bought tickets for Rush to see Rush at the Garden with my brother. We last saw him at Joe Louis Arena in July of '84. So
wow,
we're almost old men. It's gonna rock.
Almost.
Yeah, there's always somebody older, grayer, more infirm. Look to them for inspiration.
Well, I hope somebody finds this on the internet. And if you are one of the people that found us, thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the other 5 of you. Scott, you did a great job curating, and I will go back and listen to those intros over and over again. That was so gorgeous.
That was awesome.
I'm gonna mute the live stream. If you guys want to stay on the call for just a minute, just to decompress. But This has been the Music Nerds podcast with all of us co-hosting, and this was our Nebraska cast, our Brucecast, our Springsteen cast. We'll probably revisit Bruce in passing at just about every episode. His name comes up at least once an episode, it seems like. So
I think we have our people who
there should be a bell.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was that kind of guy anymore, I'm too much of a teetotaler. We should tell all our listeners to take a shot every time we say Springsteen. All right. Good night, Internet. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you. Castle.